my name is Sophia, and welcome to The Show Must Go On. So, I'm finally back and here to talk about the Season 3 finale of School Spirits. So, I'm very happy and sad to be here right now because obviously I'm so excited to talk about the finale, but I also hate the fact that the season is already over. I can't believe it. I feel like it went by so fast. Like, I don't know if anyone else felt this way, but why do I feel like it felt so much faster than last year with season 2, even though it was the exact same amount of time? I don't know. But I really loved this season, and I'm gonna get more like in-depth about my thoughts on the season overall in a video where I'm just gonna do a whole deep dive into the entire season, so stay tuned for that. But in this video, I will just be talking about my thoughts on the finale itself, and yeah, so let's get into it. So as always, starting off with the plot and going character by character. So of course, starting with Maddie. So it was really cool that we got to see her walking in this weird forest area. But then, you know, we would also see that, like, in real life, she was also, like, just walking. So it was kind of scary because she was just kind of walking about, you know, almost got hit by Livia's car, and then Livia took her in. But yeah, I just, like, thought that whole opening scene with, like, showing her walking, like, both in the forest and in the real world was, like, very cool. So we just see this weird forest, which we kind of figure out, or we kind of find out is where the exit doors lead. So obviously we all thought for a long time that they led to some sort of, you know, afterlife heaven or, you know, whatever you believe in. But obviously that doesn't seem to be the case. It kind of leads you almost like to another purgatory. I don't even know. It's kind of weird. We don't really know much about it still. But yeah, it's just like this very big forest. And there are all these mirrors around, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then there's like the river that's like split, and some people seem to be on the other side of the river. So once again, I'm gonna kind of get into that, but it's making me wonder if that is how you cross over, is just by crossing the river in this forest, because there seems to be some people on the other side of that seem to be like very at peace and like happy. But once again, we'll get into my thoughts about that. And I really liked when we got the flashback of Maddie and Simon, and I think she said it was just last year, so it was like, yeah, basically exactly a year before all of the events of this show. It's like Halloween from a year ago, and Maddie and Simon are just hanging out at Maddie's house and they're watching horror movies. But it was just like, even though it's such like a simple flashback, there was just something so cool about actually seeing Maddie and Simon just like being normal people, like just hanging out, watching scary movies, you know, before all this craziness ensued. And it was also crazy, I thought, to see Maddie with long hair, because obviously we always know her with short hair. And so that also tells us that only a year ago she had long hair. So she must have cut, you know, her signature bob sometime in the past year. And part of me, I want to know like the lore behind that, like why she cut her hair, whatever. Not that that's important at all to the story. I just love to know the lore behind all of these characters and every action they do. And then I also really liked when Maddie was like talking to Simon and like trying to get him to like remember who he was, and it was like giving us all these like flashbacks of like throughout the show's events. I don't know, I just liked that because it was so like emotional to see all these like past scenes, like while she's like talking to him about, you know, everything they've done for each other and everything. Like it was just like, it just like really made you like remember how much has happened and like everything they've done for each other. And obviously I thought one of the best scenes in this episode was when Maddie and Dave got to like see each other again, and they actually got to hug since she was kind of like in this spirit state as well. And that was just like beautiful. Like that got me. Like, I mean, of course, just thinking about Maddie has not been able, I know they had that thing where they kind of talked to each other, but she couldn't really see him in the hospital. So seeing her actually be able to see him and hug him after I think they said he passed away when she was 9. Like, she literally hasn't been able to see him or touch him since then, and like now they just get to do those things again. Like, it was just so emotional. And then obviously, you know, we see Maddie finally coming out of this like vision state because of going back through her door. And then also at the end, it like broke my heart when she's like hanging out with Simon and she like looks up and this like jock from Split River like walks by, and like in her imagination like she sees Wally, but obviously it's not actually him, and like, oh, it literally just like broke my heart. Like, I was like, no. So yeah, obviously I just want to know what is gonna happen to Wally. Is he gonna get out of this forest? Is he gonna cross over? Are they ever gonna talk again? Like, what is happening? So to me, what I thought was one of the most exciting things about this episode was Dawn being back. Oh my god. Once, you know, we were kind of getting some more like hints about the final episode, and even just the fact that it was called Dawn of the Deb, like, you know, a lot of us were kind of theorizing that Dawn was going to be in it in some shape or form. And just actually seeing her being back, like, it was just so emotional. I love Dawn. Like, she's honestly one of my favorite characters. She's just like so sweet, and like her whole arc, like especially in season 1, like when she crosses over and everything, like is just like literally like one of my favorite parts of the show. So just seeing her back was just like amazing. And I thought it was funny when she says to Maddie like, yeah, you know, we all thought when we went in these doors it was gonna be this, you know, beautiful afterlife, but nope, just a bunch of trees. And I also just wanted to note, like, in this whole scene, like in all these scenes in the forest, and whenever like the way Dawn was describing it and stuff, like she kept calling it like topsy-turvy and stuff like that, and like seeing all the mirrors and everything, it really gave me like Alice in Wonderland / Alice Through the Looking Glass vibes. And obviously, you know, I just think it's so cool that, you know, a lot of different new media like School Spirits can take like kind of basic inspiration from very classic stories like Alice in Wonderland or like The Wizard of Oz or something, like those classic stories where, you know, it just has the basic premise of like a character being sucked into like this different world, you know, which obviously is kind of the basic premise of School Spirits, like at its very, you know, most simple foundation. But I don't know, but just something about the whole forest, because obviously in Alice in Wonderland it is very like naturey and like forest, and then like the mirrors, like obviously once again gave me like Through the Looking Glass vibes, and once again the way that Dawn described it as like topsy-turvy, like that's kind of the way they talk in like Alice in Wonderland. And then also even just the way that like when the characters go into those like flashbacks of like a time in their life, the way that they get out of it is kind of by like jumping through like a mirror or something, which once again is basically like Through the Looking Glass. And we see that Dawn describes this whole forest and like the roads throughout them as ley lines or ghost roads. Well, she says that her and Janet call them either one of those things. So now talking about Janet, so obviously we see she is back as well. You know, at the end of the first episode of the season, we were kind of like, huh, like, I just thought it was kind of weird the way that she just took her door really quickly. But I always had a feeling, I was like, either there really is just some reason why Jessica Bohr, who plays Janet, like, contractually couldn't, like, film that much of the season, and they had to kind of, like, write her out. Or the thing that I was, like, more leaning towards was I was like, I don't know, I think she is gonna come back, like, in some way, and it's gonna be, like, important to the story. So obviously that is what ended up happening. Because, you know, now we know Janet has also kind of been wandering this forest and, you know, trying to figure out things and everything. So I'm just very glad that happened, because I'm gonna be honest, if the first episode where she just left, if that was like the last we ever saw of Janet, I honestly would have been pretty mad. Because like that was just so sudden and like unexpected. So I'm very happy that she was back. And I also really liked when they're talking about like the mirrors, and Janet says like how it's kind of almost like a reverse of like the scars in the school, where like, you know, when you go in your scar, you obviously are shown like your worst fears and all that, but then in this world it's like when you look in the mirrors, you're shown like some of your best memories, which like would seem good, but obviously in a way it's still bad because you're just getting like stuck in them in like a loop, and like it's not real. And you know, and she says like it's just as easy to get stuck in good memories as it is bad ones. And I just liked that line because I thought it was a really like true statement, like just about life in general. Like I feel like that can kind of serve as just like a metaphor for like how, you know, it is easy sometimes, like it can be just as easy to, you know, get trapped in good memories. And you know, because obviously yes, it's bad to dwell on like bad memories and stuff, but once again, it can also kind of sometimes be just as bad to just always be dwelling on like, you know, past good things that have happened, because then you're still just like stuck in the past and not facing new things and everything. So I just thought that was a very like profound line, and I really liked that. And then, you know, we hear from her and Dawn that they haven't been able to find their doors, so that's why, you know, we haven't seen them. They've just been like wandering around. So now talking about Simon, so obviously it's really scary because we see that his eyes are like turning white. They're like a grayish color, kind of like the pastor, which we assume is just because, I don't know, it seems to be a thing that if you're a living person, you know, stuck in the ghost realm, that you kind of start to like deteriorate, because obviously you're not really like meant to be there. And yeah, he like doesn't remember who he is or anything, which is really scary. And then we see at one point he's just like staring across the river, and he's seeing his mom on the other side, who died in childbirth with him. So this is why I was saying like I kind of like feel like maybe you do, like I know Janet and Dawn were saying, oh, don't cross the river, it's dangerous, but I was kind of wondering like why they were saying that, because once again, when I see, like we see Simon's mom on the other side, and then later we also see the pastor with the kids, and it's like they seem to be very, like when you see their expressions and everything, like they're like smiling and like they seem to be very like happy and at peace. So it makes me think that you're supposed to cross the river, and that is like getting to the afterlife or whatever. So I don't know, I guess we'll have to see about that. And then we see obviously after Maddie, you know, does her whole, you know, talks to him and everything, he finally comes back and his eyes go back to normal and everything, thankfully. And then I just want to say too, of course, like, well, first of all, him hitting Van Height / Dr. Price over the head and like saving Xavier and Maddie was amazing, obviously. And I love that they kind of did that as like a, you know, surprise of him coming back, because obviously we were still kind of like, wait, what happened? Like, he went through the door, but where is he? And then just when it like went in slow-mo and shows Maddie and Simon hugging, like I just got so emotional, because this is literally their first time being able to hug since this entire show started, because as soon as Maddie went back to her body, Simon was in the ghost world. So this is like their best friends of so many years. They went through all this hard stuff, and now this is finally their first time being able to hug again and be with each other again. And like, it was just so emotional after like everything that has happened, you know? And then I just also liked how we once again got to kind of see at the end them just like being normal people and just hanging out, going to see a movie. And I liked that Simon was like, you know, I think we need to keep our mind off of things by seeing a movie about death. And I just thought that was really funny, because I also feel like I can really like relate to that, because obviously like with my love for school spirits and everything, like I just love like thrillers and mysteries and kind of like horror and stuff. Like I love media like that, like movies, shows, books. And I just think it's really funny that even though a lot of times the media I'm consuming is pretty like dark and kind of scary or whatever, like that is like my comfort like media though. So it's just funny because that's like, I'm kind of the same way. Like I'll be like having a bad day and I'm like, you know how I'm gonna distract myself? By reading a terrifying thriller book or like watching, you know, a show called School Spirits that's like literally all about death and like can be really sad a lot of the time and stuff, you know? And then I also thought it's interesting that they're going to see Night of the Living Dead. Like they show that on like the marquee, like at the end and everything. And I just thought that's interesting because obviously I think that's kind of like nodding at, you know, the fact that now we're seeing that the ghosts will probably be able to leave the school and go around. So it kind of is like the living dead, you know what I mean? Because like they can finally walk around and go different places. So as for Wally, obviously I'm so happy and relieved that he is not completely gone. He was just in the forest as well when he took his door, because obviously at the end of the 7th episode, I know me and a lot of other fans were very scared, very sad, didn't know what was gonna happen. I mean, I don't know, like I kind of had a feeling, you know, he wasn't gonna be completely gone because, you know, they were kind of hinting that there was something else about the doors that like wasn't what we thought and all of that. But of course it was still just like scary, like as such a fan of Wally obviously and everything. But you know, and then obviously I really liked getting that little flashback when he like looks in the mirror of like him just in the 80s, you know, how popular he was and walking through the halls and everyone being like, Wally, Wally. Like, I just loved seeing that because obviously, I mean, I've talked about it before, but I just eat it up when we just get these like flashbacks of them being alive because I don't know, like I just love these characters so much and like I just want to see, you know, what their lives were like and everything. So yeah, so I really loved that scene. I do wish we could almost have gotten just like a little bit more, like, I don't know, like just seeing like a little bit more about his life or something, but obviously I know like there was a lot going on. We couldn't really get too much into that, but yeah, you know, maybe in the future. And then obviously I just thought it was so sweet once him and Maddie got to see each other again, but then now obviously they could actually touch and they hug and kiss and everything, and it was just so sweet. So now I do kind of have quite a few things to say about Charlie and Yuri. So obviously we see they kind of have this like nice talk where Charlie is finally actually being a little bit more mature and saying like, you know, I'm hearing you out about things that you've said about, you know, how you've not liked certain ways I've been acting, and I'm here for you, and, you know, like I want to give you the space if you ever need it to like freak out or whatever and like listen to you. And he's saying like, you know, if we end up getting trapped in this school, like, well, not just trapped in the school, but like being one of the being like the forgotten, like, can we still hold hands or whatever? Like they just have that sweet little talk, and I just thought that was nice because obviously, you know, I've been very vocal that Charlie was kind of getting on my nerves this season and I thought Charlie and Yuri's relationship was a little rocky, so I liked that they got to have that nice talk. And obviously it was really crazy when we see that Dr. Hunter Price sees them and is like, get out of my way, and they're like, what? And then obviously that's when they realize that it's actually Van Height in her body, because they also see she has like the ring on like a necklace, and that is something that like I feel like I should have saw coming. Like I'm surprised I didn't even like say that as like a theory or anything, but I think also because like I still was thinking that maybe the Dr. Price was gonna have more to do with the supernatural, like herself, like not as Van Height, but like actually her, like maybe she was a body snatcher or something like that. But obviously that ended up not really being the case. Like I think she kind of just was like a, you know, money hungry, power hungry person, which like, I don't know, I do feel like a little disappointed about. I just like kind of wish there was like a little bit more about her. But I mean, you know, it does make up for it a little bit that like we got the whole thing of like Van Height being in her body, because obviously that did like make her character more like complex, and like, and you know, we got to see Jennifer Tilly getting to just like be unhinged, and like, you know, going through the halls like with her baseball bat and just like going crazy and everything. And you know, because the whole time I knew there had to be at least something with her, you know, where she was gonna have some big moment or whatever, because, you know, I know that she's like a very famous actress, especially like in the horror genre, so I knew that she would need to have some sort of thing that would give her like a big moment, and you know, we finally got it. She just got to like go crazy, and I can't imagine how fun that must have been to film. And then I thought it was funny when obviously they start to realize that Dr. Price is, well, Van Height is trying to set the school on fire. I just thought it was funny when Charlie and Yuri are trying to put it out, and Charlie is like, when did the world get so lax on fire safety? Because he's saying like none of the alarms are going off or anything. I also thought it was funny when, because you know, they're in like Charlie's scar, his bullies like in the scar just keep like coming up to him and being like saying stupid things to him, and he's just like, not now, or like, you know, like just cuts them off. And I just thought that was really funny, and I also liked it because I feel like it was very representative of like, you know, I think Charlie really is growing and becoming more confident, and you know, not caring as much about those people that bullied him and all of that. And we see them kind of realize that they think like the fire was actually reaching like the ghost world too, not just the real world, because they were actually like starting to like feel the heat and like whatever. And also because they do the thing where they bring like supplies to put it out, you know, in their scars so that it won't reset, so then they're actually able to like put the fire out. But then Charlie is also like, well, maybe it's also working because the fire is actually like reaching the ghost realm too. So obviously that was pretty scary, but I do think that was also very interesting that obviously we're seeing like as time goes on, like so many of the like rules of like the ghost world are kind of being like broken or whatever, you know, like usually, you know, something like that wouldn't necessarily like affect the ghost world, but now it kind of is. And I think it's just like showing how much is changing, and you know, how much is happening, and how it's really starting to like make some of these like things that have been kind of rules for a while like kind of start to break and change. And then obviously we see, well, I'll just say too, I thought it was sweet when they say I love you to each other as they're putting out the fire. But then also obviously one of the biggest things we see in this episode is at the end when Yuri is he's just gonna like walk off the step of the school so that he will get bounced back to the greenhouse. But then he steps and he just actually steps out into the road, and he's able to leave the school grounds technically. And obviously all the ghosts look up and they're like, what the heck? And so I just think it's also interesting that, because I think Charlie says, like, did we break the boundary? Like, we're kind of thinking maybe it's because Charlie and Yuri did something really big that really, like, saved not just them, but, like, even literally, like, the living people from, like, getting killed, you know? So it's like they kind of had an impact on the real world, which then maybe is, like, partially why the boundary is kind of, like, being broken, because they had this impact. I mean, obviously, I don't know, but, or maybe it's just because, once again, there's just been so much, like, veil thinning and everything that it's just, like, it just finally, like, broke. But obviously, that is really crazy, and I'm very proud of myself because I predicted it. Like, you can literally watch it in my last video, and in, like, my season, like, literally back in my season 3 theories video, which was, like, in October, I predicted that at some point the ghosts would be able to leave the school grounds. Because, I don't know, I just thought, I was like, that would be such a good, like, next step, you know, like, in the story, to be able to, like, progress the story a little bit more, because then you can actually have them, you know, go to different locations, and then we can really start to explore, like, more of, like, their lives and, like, their family members and stuff, because they could maybe, like, see some of them, and, you know, and so I just think that's really cool. And I also just thought, I was like, well, if a living person could get into the ghost world, then what's to say the ghosts couldn't somehow end up leaving the school grounds? So I'm just very proud of myself that I kind of predicted that. So just one really quick thing about Rhonda and Quinn. I just thought it was so cool when, you know, they went through the water so that they could be popped up in the library and be seen by the living people for like a couple seconds, and, you know, they scream to everyone, get out, the superintendent set the cafeteria on fire. And, obviously I just thought that was so cool that literally all these living people could see them for a couple seconds. And, we see Nicole and Claire get up and they're like, oh my god, like, it's so weird to think, like, for them, like, they've heard about these people a lot, but they've never actually seen them, and in that moment, they could see them for a couple seconds. But I also just thought, it's also just really funny, too, like, they literally just appear, like, from the sky, and then they're just there, and they're, like, soaking wet and stuff, too, and everyone is probably just like, what? Like, I know, obviously, in the heat of the moment, everyone's just, like, they're just more focused on not burning to death, but, like, I just want to know that, like, what everyone was thinking after, like, when they thought back to that moment. Like, who were those people, and how did they just appear? Like, I just think it's so funny.